Yeah, I mean, it was weird. I mean, it started with my wife actually in February or maybe early March. She said, "Oh, should we get masks and order them uh, because they may run out?" And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Well, this COVID thing." And I just laughed. I honestly laughed. This is true as God. And I said, "So that's another swine flu." And I told her I'd seen the Diamond Princess data, and I quickly did a back of the envelope calculation. So 7 people had died in the first month from 3,700.
Mm.
Quick calculation, 3 of them were late 70s, 4 of them I think were late 80s. And if you do the stats, it's maybe a 0.2% population fatality rate you could expect. And
Mm.
the 2,000 crew, there was no mention of any problem because they
Mm.
were under 60. So you could do the math. And she's an engineer as well, first class. So I quickly told her this, and she said, "Oh," and she was just surprised there was so much hype. And I said, "No, this is a pharma thing." Now, I underestimated, of course. I was in
Mm.
Denver at Low Carb Denver, and it was nearly cancelled. I think it was March 16th, 17th. And I was going on. Luckily, I gave my talk. It was new material. And then I had to change all my flights, and they were shutting down America. And then I realized, okay, this ain't just swine flu. This is a scam of
Mm.
very impressive proportions.
Mm.
And obviously, there's people very high up the ladder involved because it's not just Big Pharma. Big Pharma can't get like Trump to shut down the airways.
Mm.
So after a few days of lockdown nonsense, I just realized, okay, whatever's going on is extremely sinister. I have 5 kids. I'm a huge truth and science person. So this is really rankling me, right?
Mm.
And I decide to begin to interview people, but I'm very careful. I don't say what I just say to you or said
Mm.
to you. I made it look like, I'm okay with a big pandemic. I'm okay with, the science.
Mm.
And I actually pulled punches because I
Mm.
knew people were psychosed. It was
Yeah.
clear already there was psychosis everywhere. But then after a month or two, when I was sharing data, I just began to get more and more open. And people
Mm.
began to send me a load of documents that I was shocked by, like forum. I never
Mm.
knew about them. And I
Mm.
found out they were instrumental in the whole thing. And then someone sent me stuff, I think it was in April or maybe May, and they sent me Common Pass. Rockefeller Foundation, Microsoft, Gates, in mid 2019, set up Common Pass for universal vaccine passports. And the guy also sent me the Google searches. He said, "I think you'd be interested in this, Ivor." The Google searches for Common Pass shot up in mid 19 when it was created, fine. And they were focused in Geneva and East Coast USA. And
Mm.
I went, "Oh my God." And then the searches went quiet and they spiked again in February 2020, Geneva and USA. So I knew with certainty then, pretty much, this was pre known about. And this is all about the that will appear,
Mm.
right? It will
Yeah.
appear within six
Yeah.
months and they will coerce it.
Mm.
And then but I shared the data on lockdown was easy. So because we had North Dakota, South Dakota, we had Sweden versus UK.
Mm.
Everywhere you look, the lockdown had zero effect, which we
Mm.
knew.
Yeah.
And at the end of April, Woods Hole Institute came out with the first published paper, and they basically showed that in a published paper that lockdown had no effect on any viral curve. So I
Mm.
was sharing that. And it turned out we had 100 papers within a year showing the exact same thing. So I just kept showing the data in an entertaining and simplified way for lay people, not to say it's a scam, but just to say, look, it makes
Mm.
no sense.
Yeah.
That's what I did, and it got me a lot of following, and it got me
Mm.
banned off platforms. It got me in
Mm.
the New York Times in a half-page spread. Yeah, September 2020. They did a half page on an Irish engineer in Dublin in the New York Times. Amazing. And
Mm.
everything I said was it was hypothetical. I was saying this is what the data suggests. They debunked everything I said, and they were 100% incorrect.
Mm.
Like a year later, I did a talk and I showed everything they said on a checklist, and I shared the data that was all out by 2022. They were incorrect in everything they said. Like
Mm.
that takes some, that's an achievement
Mm.
to be incorrect on every single facet of what you say in a newspaper article.
Mm.
But that was the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think part of the game was confusion as well, wasn't it? Because,
Yeah.
you know, how can it make sense that you walk into a restaurant and you have to put a mask on, and then you walk to the table and sit down, and then you can take it off?
Well,
Like,
actually, that's an interesting one. That's kind of part of the big lie. So
mm,
make the lie so big that ordinary people broadly just can't believe it's a lie. It's too
mm,
big, and Goebbels and even Churchill was attributed that. But another interesting thing about it is the absurdity. Hannah Arendt, who spoke a lot about totalitarianism back in the 50s, she said the absurdity, I'm paraphrasing now, is part of it. When you bring in a mass formation, a totalitarian system, and you get everyone hypnotized, the more absurd you make it increasingly, and the more people continue to buy in, the more you've trapped them psychologically. So
mm,
a lot of the absurdity, you'd say, well, that was a risk for the bad guys because coming out with absurd stuff, well, you'll be debunked.
mm,
No, if you can get the majority to buy into the nonsense, right, you've got even more power over them and they've even more to lose if they change track and say, hey, this is crap. So
mm,
there's a lot of psychology, and half of Sage in the UK for a health issue, half of them were psychologists,
mm,
right? So you didn't have to look
mm.
far and see the. It was
Yeah.
all about creating fear, absurdity, and mass formation. And my brother actually is an accountant type person, not technical, doesn't watch my stuff. He rang me in, I think it was early April, early on, and he said to me on the phone, "Is this a load of shite?" Basically, a load of crap. And I said, "Yeah, but how do you know?" Because he's not a science guy,
Mm.
really. I said, "Are you watching my interviews?" No, he never watches my stuff. And I honestly was perplexed because everything I hear and see and do, I always analyze it. It's my nature. And I immediately wondered, how the hell did he know that? And he explained it to me. He loved shopping. He'd no kids, plenty of money, and he liked shopping for gadgets. But
Mm,
they shut all the stores down. Now, a couple of the German supermarkets were still open. They were supermarkets, but they sold gadgets. Aldi and Lidl and
mm,
whatever. And he just began to notice pattern recognition. He's a smart guy, even though he's not scientific. He began to notice that the TV was telling him we're in Armageddon, and his eyes were showing him nothing was happening.
Thanks for watching this video on our YouTube channel. If you want to listen to the full episode, you can do by subscribing to the Radical Health Rebel podcast using the QR code on the screen. Or if you, like me, you prefer to watch the full episode, you can subscribe to our Substack using the QR code on the screen right now.